right, thanks for tuning in to the OFN Today for this Thursday, the 15th of November, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma, and for today's show, Teddy Sevransky and I will preview key NFL games for Week 11, including tonight's game in Seattle as the Seahawks look to make it 8 wins in 10 for Thursday night football games this season for the home team. So that's, of course, a big game in the NFC playoff picture. Meanwhile, in the AFC, Mark Lane, Houston Texans writer for Texans Wire at USA Today, will be joining me. He'll stop by at the top of the hour to talk Texans football. Then I'll close out the show today with Mountain West Conference football analyst Robert Gagliardi. Robert covers Wyoming football in the Mountain West as a beat writer for newspapers in Laramie and Cheyenne, and he's been with us all season. And we'll talk about the big win for Boise last Friday and the big game this week, Fresno and San Diego State, and much more that's coming up in about an hour from now when we talk Mountain West Conference football. The OFN Today is brought to you by ourlads.com, providing the best pro and college football depth charts on the net, and covers.com, featuring live scores, stats, and odds, considered the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts with over 45 million visits a year. Speaking of covers.com, welcome in my co-host and analyst that covers Teddy Sevransky, a.k.a. Teddy Covers. How you doing, Teddy?
I'm doing just fine, Greg. How about yourself today?
What came first, the Teddy Covers or the covers.com?
Covers.com was there first.
Okay.
And I used to have a website way back in the day called whocovers.com. And when I first moved to Las Vegas, I didn't even know covers.com existed. When I first moved to Las Vegas, one of my friends started calling me Teddy Covers, and boy, it rolls off the tongue a lot better than Sevransky does.
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. It's a good one.
It's stuck, and so even though I work for Covers, my Teddy Covers is no relationship to Covers experts necessarily. Or
All right.
like
well, it's, if anybody wants to believe that, then let them. So
and it's service mark, so you can't use it now. I got it legally. It's legally my name now.
Wow, I like that. Okay, well, you do live in Vegas, so that would make sense. All right, so big game tonight. Let's start with this one in the NFL. We'll just do some NFL games today because there's a lot going on in the NFL. And by the way, I'll be talking full college football on OFN College Football Weekly in a few hours with Mitch Light from AthlonSports.com. So we'll have a lot to talk about in college football. So in the NFL, though, Ted, the game tonight is big for Seattle and Green Bay. I really liked Green Bay last week, even though they were giving up a lot, because the Packers had looked really good in those losses to the Patriots and the Rams. And the Dolphins, I mean, we saw what happened with them, especially with their offensive line in the Jet game. So the Packers at home looked like the way to go. And look, Aaron Jones finally got an opportunity to be the workhorse. I've been waiting for that all season. And Mike McCarthy, it took him, 9 games to wake up and realize that he should be the workhorse. And it worked out. And that gives the Packers a lethal combination, passing, rushing. Now they got to go the road in a short work week. As I said at the open, we talked about this last week. The Thursday nights and the Panthers were a mess last week. I don't know, though. I mean, this one I think might be a little bit different just because of the fact that the Packers really need this game. And they also have the best quarterback in football. So I'm willing to forgive the 2-7 in this spot for the Packers. I just think the Packers are a better team than Seattle.
I can't get away from the fact that there have been, the Thursday night home team has been so dominant.
I know.
That is the only thing we can talk about for Thursday night football that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
We've seen 2 road teams win this year. One of them was a bus ride. Philly beat the Giants. The other was a first-time head coach getting his first taste of Thursday night football. That was when Denver went and blew out Arizona, a very bad team. The 2 home teams to lose are very, very bad teams in the Giants and Arizona, 2 of the 5 worst teams in football. Sure. Seattle is not. And you say it's a must-win game for the Packers. It is. It's just as much of a must-win game for the Seahawks. Loser here is eliminated from the playoff chase. There's 9 teams in the NFC chasing 4 spots after New Orleans and L.A. And both these squads have 4 wins right now. Someone's going to have 4 wins after this game, and they're going to be done. And to all this talk about Aaron Rodgers, I believe you. Aaron Rodgers is great. So is Russell Wilson. Russell and Wilson doesn't get the hype Rodgers does. When when you're ranking quarterbacks into tiers, Wilson's going to be in the same tier as Rodgers, as elite. And boy, I mean, they beat up a bad team last week. Seattle's not a bad team. I can only take the Seahawks.
Well, let's put it. What would you do in this game if it wasn't Thursday night?
But it is.
All right, and I'm just saying. I'm just saying. What would you do? That's all.
I wouldn't be as inclined to play Seattle.
Okay, so, and that's again, it's important. It is important to note that the Thursday night thing, and it makes a lot of sense because all of the trends actually go to Seattle. Not just that, you've got the Packers haven't won a game at all on the road this year. They're 0-4 straight up ATS on the road, so they haven't won a game yet. And these two teams, interesting enough, these two teams have played 7 times since 2009, which is okay, for two teams that are not in the same division, including the 2015 playoff game, and every game the home team won. So all of the trends point towards Seattle. I completely get that, but I'm just looking at this as and I say Green Bay, and I agree with you, obviously. Seattle needs the game, too. I just think Green Bay's a better team, despite Mike McCarthy, and I just like the way they're playing. I like those two. The 2 losses were good losses. The win last week was a good win. It was a blowout win. They should have blew them out, and they did blow them out. I think their confidence is getting up there. I like again. I think they're just a little bit better than Seattle in all phases right now. KJ Wright's out again for Seattle. They've had some issues there, but hey, the Thursday night thing is a true deal, and it makes a lot of sense. So I'm just going with the Packers based on just a regular game. But the Thursday night deal has, and matter of fact, we even talked about this last week about if you just wanted to, and right now you'd be 1-0, if you just wanted to take the Thursday night home team the rest of the season, and I think we were there 5 or 6 more games or something like that, then you said yes, you should do that, and you want to know if you do that. So we'll see if you're 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, look, the stats show that the Green Bay is a better team, or they've had the better season so far. They've done it against a tougher schedule. 6.1 yards per play versus 5.6 for Seattle. 5.5 yards per play allowed on defense compared to 5.8 for Seattle. So just on a yards per play basis, which is, you want to break down NFL into one stat. That's not a bad stat to use. Yards per play offense, yards per play defense. And you're seeing nearly a yard per play differential, 0.8 of a yard per play differential between these two teams in favor of the Packers.
All right, let's talk about now the Sunday games, and let's go with this playoff rematch game, Pittsburgh at Jacksonville. It's about 5.5, 6-point spread for Pittsburgh, and they're red hot. They've won 5 straight up ATS. Jags have lost 5 straight, 0-4-1 ATS the last 5. So even just right there, you look at that, you don't even need to see who the teams are, and you know who you're taking, or you should take. But I'm going to look at also the fact that this is look. You don't get it a whole lot in the NFL. You get it more in college with the revenge situations. NFL, not so much. The pros don't care too much about revenge as much as they do in college, but they care. And Pittsburgh's riding high. Their confidence is through the roof. They've got the Le'Veon Bell thing behind them now. Not that it mattered because they were still winning football games. They got revenge on their minds against Jacksonville. Jags are just playing awful football. They've got no confidence. Brandon Linder's now out for the year, their best lineman. So, I mean, they can't even start maybe Eric Flowers, and who the hell would want him to start anyway? So just imagine who the backup guy to Eric Flowers is. I think Jags are in a lot of trouble here. Look, it could turn their season around. They could win this football game, but they just have way too many injuries this season, the Jags, and Blake Bortles is just not the type of quarterback to get them over the hump and to start one of those winning streaks. So I have no problem giving up the 5 or the 6 in this spot.
Well, I mean, the Jags played their best game last week. They shut out Indy in the second half. Shut them out. Not even a field goal.
Yep.
Blake Bortles hitting receivers, looking comfortable in the pocket, looked like a QB who was a capable NFL quarterback.
He has those every once in a while, yes.
Yeah, and even with Jacksonville playing, as well as they could play, they lost the game.
They still lost.
And didn't cover. Thank you, missed extra point. Thank you, missed field goal. Thank you, late fumble. They got to push. But when Bortles plays well, and the Jags lose, that's a problem. And it speaks volumes about this defense. And I don't know if they just came out of the bye and were a little bit sluggish and turned it on in the second half. But the defense has been gashed repeatedly.
Yes, they have been.
During this 5-game skid.
Yeah.
And it's the Jags defense that's supposed to be dominant.
Yeah.
And if it's not dominant, they're going to have a problem against the Steelers. Because, there aren't many revenge games that mean something in the NFL. Playoff revenge at times has been meaningful. We've seen the Saints. Remember that win at Minnesota. That's the one that I can think. You might find at the most half a dozen games in the NFL in a season where you say, revenge matters. Or, what happened last time matters. What happened last year, I should say, matters.
Yeah.
This is one of those games. The Jags didn't just beat Pittsburgh. They humiliated the Steelers twice on their home field.
Yeah.
So you say, all right, do we want to lay this price? The handicapping 101 says the team that covered 5 in a row versus the team that failed to cover 5 in a row. You know where the value lies.
Yeah.
It's on the team that nobody wants. But given the ulterior motive for the Steelers here, there's no way I'm going to get the window with Jacksonville. Last week was their season. They blew it. They had it, and they blew it. And now they're facing a team that will not let up on them.
Yep.
And a team that's in pretty good rhythm. And, by the way, Pittsburgh also had a little bit extra time to prepare because they played on Thursday night. So all those factors working in the Steelers' favor. That being said, this is arguably the most public play on the board this week. Everybody's on Pittsburgh. So it's one of these games that I'm going to talk about, but I will not actually have a wager on the Steelers in my pocket. No way.
Okay.
It's just too public a play.
All right. Keep in mind, Jacksonville 3-1, straight up 4-0 against the spread as 5-point dogs or more since the start of last season, including the playoffs when they lost the only game they lost, but covered against the Patriots. So they've done a good job in that role since last year. And I only say since last year because that's really only the time we care about the Jags as a relevant football team. By the way, the win and cover stats, I think maybe starting to get even better over the last couple of weeks because it's still at 117, 24-4, which is still very big, which is why I always try to go win and not worry about whether I have to give up 5 or 6 points and will they cover. I just completely disregard that. But now lately it's been even better towards that percentage because the last 2 weeks is 24-2-1, and the only 2 losses were double-digit spreads. So I think and I don't think it's a coincidence that now we're getting into the point of the season where even though we're giving up 10 with the Packers last week and what was that other 10-point game that covered last week? I forgot. Oh, the Chargers. Fact is that the better teams are just getting better and the bad teams are getting worse. And no matter what the point spread is, as long as it doesn't get too high, I think that you just don't worry about. I'm not worrying about the Steelers giving 6. I think if the Jags cover, the Jags might just win the football game. All right.
And you make a really excellent point because people tend to fixate on point spreads.
Yeah.
Because they're different from who's going to win the game straight up.
Yes.
And over the long term in the NFL, straight up winner covers about, I believe it's 6 out of 7 times, somewhere in the 83, 84% of the time. So if you're just doing nothing but picking the winners, you'll do all right when it comes to betting.
Yeah, and also just hopefully everybody keeps in mind what we're talking about is NFL, not college football.
Yes. There's this very different rules for college football.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the Houston-Washington game now, and both teams are 6-3. We talked about. I mentioned this last week about how I went with Washington because they just like being a dog. And they were a better team than Tampa Bay anyway. I know they had all those offensive line injuries, but look, they didn't have a great offensive game against the Bucs. The Bucs have a terrible defense, and now the Redskins, even though they're 3-0, straight up as a home dog, and they're a 3-point home dog again. The fact is, you've got J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, and company going up against this just mashed up offensive line that barely got through Tampa Bay last week. Now, 1 week you get through okay. A second week, now the longer you got to deal with this nonsense, sooner or later you're going to get your lunch handed to you. And I think Houston's got the defense and the ability, of course, to go ahead and do that. They've won 6 straight. They've covered 3 straight. And I also just think at this point in time, there's a better team anyway. The only thing that concerns me is that Washington's been really good in this role. That's it. Other than that, I'm taking Houston giving it 3.
Yeah, and of course the Texans certainly in the much better spot. Extra time to prepare. They when a team goes on an extended straight up and ATS winning streak, the bandwagon tends to get pretty big. We'll talk about that. We talk about Saints and Eagles in a few minutes. But it's a Texans team with the 6th straight win. They've only lost ATS once during that span. They were laying 10 to Buffalo. They won by a touchdown in that ball, and everything else has been a win against the number for the Texans. So the betting bandwagon's getting there. This is a point that I was disappointed in. I'll just put it that way. But Washington did something last week that no team in NFL history has ever done before, ever in the history of the NFL. This isn't like merger. This is like since like the Iowa Barnstormers in the 40s or something. Whoever those teams were, the Chicago Stags. It never happened that a team had gained 500 yards and been held to less than 13 points.
Wow.
The Redskins held Tampa to 3 points. And I'll give the defense credit.
Sure.
Bend but don't break. Yeah. They forced all the field goal attempts. They forced the 4th down stops. They forced the turnovers in the red zone. But the defense gave up 500 yards last week.
And that was
the
Bucs.
offense, again, if Washington falls behind, this team cannot come back. The passing game is inept, and it's not getting any better. So I'm with you. There are matchup problems for the Redskins on the offensive line that are going to be significant here. And it would be Texans or pass for me.
Yeah, I mean, they've got Scherf out for the year. Trent Williams isn't playing in the game again. They've got now two linemen out for the year. And 3 guys who basically were with the team for a week played last week, got by the Bucs. It ain't happening against a really good football team unless the defense really wins the day again against Houston. But they got to play better than they did against Tampa because they give up 500 total yards to Houston. They ain't holding them to 3 points.
No, so, and remember the week before what Atlanta did to them.
That is true.
Atlanta. Let's put it this way: the Falcons and the Bucs moved the ball equally well. Atlanta scored 38. Tampa scored 3.
Yep.
The 3 is the aberration there.
And by the way, Washington at Dallas on Thanksgiving next week. So while you're flying away somewhere to enjoy your holiday, there's actually some good Thanksgiving Day games next week, and that's going to be one of them. Seeing the Redskins and the Cowboys battle it out on Thanksgiving, it's good, because it's good to see them on Thanksgiving. It's also good to see them on Thanksgiving when they're playing, well, at least when they're relevant in their division race.
Sure.
So that'll be nice next week. All right. By the way, Mark Lane again will be with me in a few minutes to talk about the Houston Texans, and we'll talk to him about exactly how Houston is putting this together, the 6-game win streak, especially with that offensive line. All right. Next up is Dallas and Atlanta. And Dallas, I don't know. I mean, seriously, is there any way to figure out the Cowboys from week to week on exactly what you're going to get from them? And for Atlanta, they get on the win streak, and then they can't beat Cleveland, and they look like the bad Atlanta team that we saw before the winning streak. They're a 3.5 point favorite at home. This is another team, by the way. Atlanta will be at New Orleans on Thanksgiving night, so that's a good one. I mean, Atlanta is still a better team. Dallas is dealing with some injuries in the offensive line with the center still out. A couple other key guys are banged up. I don't know. 2 road wins in a row. I doubt it. I'd probably go with the Falcons here, but I just don't think I could even touch this game.
Yeah, it's a really hard game, and it's one of these games where I can make a case for both sides, and when that's the case, I tend to pass on those type of contests. Yeah. I mean, the case for Atlanta is really clear. The Falcons were fine. Last week at this time, we're talking about Atlanta. Watch out for them in the second half, and then they have a bad game at Cleveland. Both sides of the ball. They played poorly after that 3-game winning streak against the Browns, but now they're returning home. This game, much like Seattle-Green Bay, this is a playoff elimination game. Loser here is done.
That's right.
And Atlanta at home, we know how good that team's been on their home field, not just this year, not just last year. In recent seasons, the only trouble they had this year was, that crazy game against Cincinnati where the Bengals scored on the final play of the game, which I was very pleased about at the time. But in the long term, it speaks volumes to as to what this offense is capable of doing on this field. That being said, their defense stinks, and we saw it again very clearly last week. And Dallas' defense doesn't stink, and Dallas, with Amari Cooper finding some comfort last week, all of a sudden Zeke Elliott has room to run. When you got a double team a wide receiver, it changes the whole dynamic of that Cowboys offense, and it's certainly a problem. Any balanced offense is a problem for the Atlanta Falcons. But, when you see, Baker Mayfield come in and light them up the way they did, and then Chubb get a 92-yard run, I mean, that's a big concern for me, laying points with Atlanta. But for Dallas, off a big win against a divisional rival, what's up next? Short week and the big Thanksgiving Day game against Washington. Interesting game to watch. I'm fascinated to watch this game, but I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Atlanta wins by a field goal.
All right, Tennessee, Indy, and the Colts are back in a position with 3 straight wins that they could possibly be a wild card team this season. And they'll have to get the win, though, on Sunday against the Tennessee team, which I'm completely sold on. I like Tennessee in this spot. They're getting 2.5, 2, 3, whatever. I'm not going to worry too much about that. Fact is, I just think that what we've seen over the last 2 weeks is not a mirage. I've talked about this enough over the last week or two. I think Tennessee is now starting to get into a groove with Matt LaFleur. Took them a while. New offense, new scheme. Had the bye week. Since the bye, they're already running on full cylinders offensively. Mariota's even playing well. Davis is becoming the big play receiver they thought he was. I think everything's going well for Tennessee right now. I know the Colts are on a nice little win streak, but they beat the struggling Jags, Oakland, and Buffalo during that streak. I just think Tennessee's a better football team, and it's going to set up a huge Monday night game next week at Houston.
I don't argue with that at all, and I like Indy. There's a lot to like about Indy.
I do too. Yeah,
and if the game's a tight game fourth quarter, I'll take Andrew Luck over just about anyone.
Yep.
I really will, and especially after the Colts got off to that hot start offensively last week, and then didn't score a point after halftime, where the offense didn't move the football. Well, they moved the football, but they kept on shooting themselves in the foot a little bit against Jacksonville. Those are the type of things that, as Luck gets more and more comfortable, it'll happen less and less often. But boy, that Titans defense is good, and that's the difference here. You look at Indy defensively, 37 to Houston, 38 to New England, 42 to the Jets, 28 to the Raiders, and the Raiders would have scored more if Doug Martin doesn't fumble. And then last week, where the Jags moved the ball up and down the field, and Blake Bortles looked good against them. Week after week, teams are moving the football against Indy. The only good defensive effort they've had in the last 2 months, basically, came against the Buffalo Bills. Whereas that Titans defense, look at the numbers. 17 against Houston, 6 to the Jags, 23 against Philly, 13 against the Bills, 21 against the Ravens, 20, 14, and 10 their last 3 ball games. No one has let up this Titans defense all year. That certainly works in their favor in a game where one stop could make all the difference in the fourth quarter.
All right, then we've got, speaking of Philadelphia, the Eagles are in New Orleans. The Saints are up to as much as a 9-point favorite over the defending Super Bowl champs. And this was one of those games that I was, like you said, I was kind of going back and forth on this a little, because how often do you get, the defending Super Bowl champs getting 9 with all that? I mean, 3-1 or higher, 350 on the money line. And okay, but the Eagles, I don't know what to expect from them. I thought they were right. Every time I think that they're about to take off, they lay an egg. But then I just said, okay, as I often say, well, I'm not looking at this from the Saints' point of view. I'm looking at this from the Eagles' point of view, and that is the fact that, okay, how often am I going to get a team that is still talented like the Eagles, plus 350 on the money line, in a desperate situation where they must win the football game? This is the first time they're a dog this year. They have not lost by more than 7 points this year as well. Keep that in mind with all their losses this year. And they've won their last 6 games as a dog last year in games that mattered. Don't care about that Dallas game in Week 17. Didn't mean anything. Won their last 6 as a dog last year in games that mattered, including all 3 playoff games. So they're now back into a spot that maybe they feel comfortable in. Maybe they get Lane Johnson back, too. That would be big. So I'm going to go ahead and just roll the dice on the Eagles on the money line and hope that they play their best game of the year in the biggest spot of the year for them that might save their season. But not going to do it big.
Yeah, I mean, money line is a leap of faith here. I'm really hoping Philly loses. I've got a ticket on the Eagles under 10.5 wins, and I like cashing those type of bets, as many as I can by Thanksgiving.
And you would do that here for sure.
Yeah. I already cashed the big one was on the Niners under 8.5. We already got that one in the bank on Monday night. But we'd like to see the Eagles lose this game. That being said, I'm with you in the concept that Philly's supposed to be competitive in this game. They are. We haven't seen them lose a game by more than a touchdown this year. They had 1 loss by more than a touchdown last year, and that came in a pretty flat spot. They'd won, I think, 8 in a row at that time and covered them, almost all of them. And they went out to Seattle and then had a hiccup game. Mm-hmm. It happens. The year before, it wasn't a team that was losing. This is still the Doug Peterson era. It wasn't a team that was losing by I think they had 2 losses that year. One to the Packers, one to the Seahawks, and then one to Cincinnati. They all came right in a row at the end of the season by more than a touchdown. But the bottom line is, Philly has been favored in every game this year, and now they're catching more than a TD. And Philly hasn't lost a game by more than a touchdown this year, and only one last year, and is catching more than a TD. The Saints are really good, though.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
But from a betting bandwagon standpoint, New Orleans, the point spread cover streak started at Atlanta, week 3. And since then, winning cover against the Giants and the Redskins and the Ravens. Hey, they got lucky, missed extra point, but they got the winning cover there. Minnesota, things broke right. The Rams, things broke right. Cincy last week. That's 7 straight wins and covers. In the NFL, the point spread streaks don't go on indefinitely.
Yeah.
Even with the elite teams.
Yeah.
The markets catch up.
Yeah.
This price is too high. I'm with you.
And that's one of those, because you do look at this and you go, wow, the Eagles are getting 8 or 9? I mean, the Eagles.
Yeah, but let's not forget. There's 2 people say, what's the difference between Philly this year and last year? Well, they lost their brains. Frank Reich's in Indy, John DeFilippo, who was the guy who coached up Carson Wentz last year. He's moved on to greener pastures.
Yep.
So that leaves the triumvirate brain trust for the offense. They got the worst of the 3, and Peterson's still there. And the thing that surprised me the most is how bad their secondary's been. That secondary's been gashed repeatedly this season, and that's not what you want going against New Orleans. So
and
there are
Darby's
concerns here with Philadelphia, but from a point spread perspective, it stands out. The Eagles, it really does.
And by the way, Darby's now out for the year. They may get Mills back, but it looks like he might need another week. Maybe they get Sidney Jones back, their slot corner. So, but it's possible that, again, with Darby out for sure, they might be without 3 very key guys in the secondary again against Drew Brees. Teron Armstead, the left tackle, is out now for about 3 to 4 weeks for the Saints. Not sure that's going to matter too much in the short term. Speaking of DeFilippo, the Vikings at Chicago on Sunday Night Football. Believe it or not, another good primetime game coming up this week, as the Vikings are half game back of the Bears. What sticks out for me is a couple things in this. Well, yes, the Vikings have won 6 out of 7 against Chicago, but more importantly, the Bears, who have won 3 straight, have beaten the Jets, the Bills, and the struggling Lions. And their other wins this year, 2 out of the 3 against Tampa Bay, Arizona. The other one, Seattle, all 6 wins versus teams that are not over 500. Vikings are a good football team. Vikings play better on the road. I'm going to go ahead and take the Vikings in this spot. I know the Bears are close, and maybe this is the game where they officially put their flag down on the field and say, we are the best team of the NFC North. I'm not so sure that's going to happen yet. I'll stick at least another game with the Vikings getting 3.
Oh, yeah, you're preaching the choir over here. Who do you trust in a close game in the fourth quarter? All right, I'm not expecting a blowout here. But it comes down to here, and you have 2 really good defenses. All right, Vikings defense elite, Bears defense they're ranked number 1, although some of that is certainly schedule related. So here's the fourth quarter. All right, you got your choice. Do you want your money on Mitch Trubisky against the Vikings defense, or Kirk Cousins against the Bears defense? And it's a no-brainer. A no-brainer. Sure. Trubisky's not there yet, and we've seen it over and over again. This is a tough defense. He's been feasting on the weak. And there's a lot of love for Chicago. I'm amazed at how much love there is for Chicago. And a lot of it's that defensive statistical profile. Fangio's a beast. He's, since his days at Stanford, coaching the defense under Jim Harbaugh, I think Fangio's been a coordinator that I've had my eye on as, wow, this guy gets a lot done with mediocre talent. And when he's got good talent, they're elite. But Zimmer, extra time to prepare. Zimmer off a bye, Zimmer as a dog, all good long-term trends. I think Chicago is the overvalued commodity in this game.
Both teams playing big division games on national TV next week. Chicago at Detroit on Thanksgiving, and Minnesota will host the Packers on Sunday Night Football. The final game before we let you go is the crazy situation between Kansas City and L.A., as now the game will be in L.A. I don't even know why they schedule these games in places where this could even happen. But they take the check, and now they're going to be giving a lot of checks out to a lot of people who bought tickets and had trips and all that stuff. So NFL is going to pay for this one, but they did the right decision, because what a kind of PR nightmare it would have been had any top players get injured in this game. So they go to L.A. I find it interesting that the Rams were a 2.5-point favorite. They're now 3.5. I don't know. I mean, it's just because Rams they're not a very big home field team that you get worried. Oh, I got to go to L.A. and that crowd. So I don't think that worries me at all. But anyway, it's 3.5 now, and the Rams are just 1-6 against the spread in their last 7. I know the point spreads have been a little higher than that. Only time that the Rams have been favored by 6 or less this year was when they were favored by 1.5 against the Saints. They lost the football game. Cooper Kupp's out for the year. I think that's a big loss. Whether it affects them in this game or not, probably not, but in time it's going to. Chiefs are 2-1 straight up, 3-0 against the spread as a dog this year. I don't know. There's just something about the Rams that I don't know. In big games, I'm just not sure I trust them. So I'm going to take the Chiefs. Justin Houston's back. That's a big deal for me that he's back. He already had a big play last week. But I'll take the Chiefs and again the 3.5 to 4 in this one. And even if they lose, maybe I cover.
Yeah, 3.5s or the 4s are gone. The 3.5s are going. So if you like Kansas City, bet them sooner rather than later. And you say, why did the market only adjust 1 point?
Yeah.
I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because they couldn't adjust more because they knew Kansas City money was going to come.
Okay.
And that's really what it was.
Okay.
All right, we have to make an adjustment. It's not in Mexico City. It's going to be in L.A. We got to adjust 2.5, 3.5. We're not making a 3-point adjustment for that. We're making a 1-point adjustment because, KC's bandwagon is enormous. And the Rams don't have a bandwagon right now.
That's because of that 1-6 ATS mark in the last 7.
The Rams are burning everyone's backers. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The only game they covered was against the 49ers since week 3 of the season. Whereas Kansas City, and even last week, they didn't play well. Lo and behold, did you watch that late pick?
Yes.
Anyone that had Kansas City in that minus 16.5 of their pockets going, get in the end zone, get in the end zone. You didn't get there. But even in a game where they played lousy and laid double digits, they still had a chance. They sniffed a point spread cover at the end. But the thing that's going to give Kansas City is going to be the gift that keeps on giving. All right? Their defensive statistical profile, their season-long defensive numbers are bad. They're giving up 6 yards per 6 yards a play, 5.1 yards per carry.
But I thought the Rams were going to be better, to tell you the truth. I expected with the talent they had on defense, the Rams were going to be better.
That defense is underachieved this year.
They have.
Flat out.
Yeah.
I mean, and week after week, it's gotten worse, not better. Minnesota moved the ball against them. Seattle moved the ball against them twice, gashed them on the ground. We all saw what the Saints did. We all saw what the Packers did against them.
Yeah.
The Broncos moved the ball against them. The Rams' defense is not all that by any stretch. We know they had the injuries in the secondary early, and those are clearly affecting them. But the run defense hasn't been there. I mean, they got Sue and Donald, which is as devastating a combo in the middle of the line. Those two alone should be able to make any defense good.
Yeah.
And yet the Rams defense has been vulnerable. But it's that KC defensive statistical profile that is going to – the wise guys will bet under every time they see a total this high. The auto bet every time.
Okay.
They're going to bet it on – you watch. At all the sharp books, it's already down. The 64s, they're 62.5 at the books that that take the $5,000 and $10,000 bets. The sharp guys are betting. They just auto bet to the under. That's what they do when they see a total this high, and they're going to auto bet the defensive stats. Say KC's no good, their defense is no good. But if you watch the Chiefs and you pay attention, it's not about yardage for Andy Reid. I think Kansas City perennially undervalued, and Andy, you want to look at the coach who makes you the most money and nobody ever respects, it's Andy Reid.
As a dog too.
Yeah, Andy. This is his role, and nobody. Andy Reid, he can't win a big game. Guess what? This is a big game. The Chiefs are live.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think we're probably going to see a Big 12 game here, where we're just going to see they're going back and forth.
Would you remember the last time when we had Mahomes and did Mahomes and Goff match up?
No.
No. So who did Mahomes match up with? There was a great shootout they were talking. Oh, it was Mahomes and Mayfield, I think it was. I was reading something about where they matched up in college.
Oh, in college. Okay, yeah. I don't think it was Goff and Mahomes unless it was a game from whatever.
Yeah, it had to be a bowl game. Yeah, no. When you read 6,000 articles, one that popped into my head. Yeah, but the one talking about Mahomes and Mayfield.
Yeah, that's what we'll probably get here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it has that potential.
Yeah, it's one of these games that's going to come down to the last few minutes and who's going to make the play or the mistake. That's probably what's going to happen. And if we could foretell that now, we would be rich. All right, Teddy, I appreciate it. As always, enjoy the football. You're going to be off next week because of Thanksgiving, so enjoy the holidays, and good luck over the next couple of weeks. We'll talk to you, I guess, the last Thursday of the month.
I look forward to it. Enjoy Turkey Day. Best of luck this weekend.
Thanks, Ted. All right, that's Teddy Sevransky. And I know, as Teddy says, it may not flow off the tongue, but I like saying Teddy Sevransky. Because then again, Teddy's changed his name. So, but I'm an original kind of guy. Anyway, tweet Teddy at Teddy_covers. Okay, that's a lot easier to remember, which is why he knows what he's doing with his marketing. At Teddy_covers. And again, go to covers.com and check out all of Teddy's picks. And you could also... trying to think of... No, I was thinking of one of the other covers analysts. Just taking a look over here while I'm being distracted over something. I got to point this out. See, I didn't even realize. See, I should have asked Teddy what he thought about the Michigan-Ohio State game. I keep forgetting he's a Michigan grad, and me being a Michigan fan. Oh, well, I guess I'll talk to Teddy after Michigan beats Ohio State. So I should have asked him about who he thought was going to be the favorite in that game because I talked about that with Dave Koken from Covers a few days ago. And Dave believes they're going to be 3.5 point favorite. It's not like I don't believe that. But as a fan, I really don't want that to be the case because I don't want to see, because I've said this many times before, as you know, I do not like it when teams that get completely dominated by another team over the years is like the favorite. Now, 3.5's not bad, but they're a road favorite if that number holds true, 3.5, what Dave believes they'll be. And that's scary because that means Ohio State's going to be, they're going to have all the edge as far as the psychological edge, and I don't like that because they're going to be they're the lower ranked team or the higher ranked team, which is lower ranked. They're the lower ranked team. Unless they blow out Maryland, they haven't exactly been playing great. They haven't been covering. Well, they did cover last week, and I did take them. And that was because the line went down to like 3 or 4 against Michigan State, and I thought that was kind of low. But even in that game, they didn't look all that great. So they haven't been playing particularly well. And you take a look at the fact that, again, as I throw in there, that Michigan hasn't, what are they, beaten them like once in 15 years or something like that, and Michigan's going to have some pressure. So that it's just, I just don't like that. I don't like that combination. It's not a good combination. And it's not that I don't believe that that's what's going to happen, that they're not going to be the favorite. It's just, as a fan, I wish they weren't. So anyway, I don't think it's going to matter, though. I really don't. I think with what Michigan's been doing this season and who they've been beating and how things are going with both Michigan and Ohio State, that even though Ohio State's going to feel, hey, you're crazy, man. We've owned this team for all these years, and we're the home dog. Are you freaking crazy? Okay, let's show this team who should be the home dog. So even though all that stuff is going to be working against Michigan next week, I still have a lot of confidence that they're going to get the job done. But hopefully they do. If they do, then I'll get an opportunity in a couple of weeks to talk about that with Teddy. So I've got to just accentuate that in my notes here. So the next time that we talk, we'll have to talk about that game. And again, hopefully it's a good conversation. It happens to be a good conversation because it needs to be. I just can't lose again to Ohio State, especially in a situation that more than likely means the playoffs. All right, speaking of college football, we'll be talking with Robert Gagliardi at the bottom of the hour with Mountain West Conference football. Fresno State, San Diego State, that's a big game in that conference. Boise beat Fresno last week, so it looks like Boise, Utah State, and that winner will take on the winner of this week's game between Fresno State and San Diego State for the Mountain West Conference Championship. So we'll talk more about that a little bit later on. Don't forget we have our college football weekly show with Mitch Light. That comes up in a few hours. So wall-to-wall college football talk, every conference. We're going to go over all the key games, injury updates, trends, odds, picks, and more. So that's a little bit later on here on this show and on the network later on as well. But let's talk some Houston Texans football. Texans Wire at USA Today writer Mark Lane rejoins us on the show. Mark, thanks for talking to us again.
Hey, Greg, good to be on. Sorry to be a penny holding up a dollar.
Okay, well, whatever that means, no problem. Is that a Texas saying?
Yes.
That's like, I can envision like you wearing like a 50-gallon hat, and you've got the boots, and you're laying in on the porch. You've got your feet crossed, and then you say what you just said. And that's,
yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm envisioning. Okay, so the first question I got to ask you, Mark, is how exactly has this offensive line changed for the better during this winning streak? And they've been able to run the football. It doesn't look like the pass protection is like all that considerably great or better. It's better, but it still has issues. But the running game has been fantastic from what I see. How is it all happening? Give me all the reasons why their offensive line has turned around over the last 6 games.
Well, one of the reasons is because they found a combination that works. They had some injuries that impacted their tackle play. So in week 1, Chantrell Henderson, who was the right tackle, gets injured. And backup Martinez Rankin, who's a rookie, third-round rookie out of Mississippi State, he has more experience at left tackle than he does right tackle. So they take their starting left tackle in Julian Davenport and kick him over to the right.
Okay.
And then now you got Rankin, a rookie, protecting Watson's blind side. And so it just created they were trying to find a combination to work after Henderson went down. They finally found it. They moved Davenport back to left tackle. They bring in, third-year veteran Kendall Lamb and have him play right tackle, and the guard situation has worked out the way they've envisioned with left guard Senio Calameti doing a good job, and then Nick Martin is still playing center, and then Zach Fulton, he's been playing the right, and Greg Mance has filled in when either of those guys have been injured. So they just found a combination that works.
And it's just a combination. Nothing different as far as there being more. They're putting more of an emphasis on the run game or any other types of scheme changes. It's mainly the combination on the offensive line that's really been the trigger.
Yes, it is. Bill O'Brien has always put an emphasis on the run game, much to his own detriment. And
except if he's at the 1-yard line.
Yeah, especially. So the execution has gotten better as a result. Nothing has really changed. But I think another element that has helped is Deshaun Watson has been very careful with the football. He's learned how to become. You look at Tom Brady, for example. What he does, it's really well. Yes, he throws the touchdowns and he has all the passing yards and everything, but he knows how to manage a game. Look at what he did against Buffalo on Monday night a couple of weeks ago. He just played a war of attrition with them, and then they finally broke. And Watson's starting to learn that with his game. He hasn't thrown a pick in the last 3 games. He's just managed the football, let the defense do what they can to pressure the other team's quarterback into a big mistake, and then he still has that big playability, as we saw the 5 touchdowns against Miami. So that has also contributed to their success.
All right. Let's talk about, of course, Fuller going down Is that going to be a long-term problem for the rest of the receiving core not named DeAndre Hopkins?
No, I think that they've found a way to retool with Demaryius Thomas. It does take away their deep threat because that's what Fuller was. He was the guy who could run those go routes. But in terms of the talent, I think the talent is still there.
Okay, and Thomas plays he's a different player than Fuller though. But you'd think that's fine. That's not going to matter much. And I know it's only been a game, but hey, they've had now a whole week extra of practice. So expectations are high that Thomas is going to have a, kind of like this always is a good thing. You get a player that looks like, we haven't been in the playoffs in the last couple of years, and my stats have gone down, and psychologically that could really hurt a player. Now he goes to a hot football team with a hot quarterback, so that could be huge for a guy like Thomas at this stage of his career.
Yes, and it also can help the Texans offense know how to win and how to control themselves when they get into deep December football.
All right. Talk about then the defense, which is really nice to see that these guys are healthy, at least now. Of course, we still have some games to play, but that's got to be one of the biggest deals, too, is to know that, wow, J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney, they're playing football together. So that happens, and that's great. So what's holding the Houston Texans back right now from being a dominant defense?
I think what held them back is injuries at the cornerback position, because you had their intended Week 1 starter Kevin Johnson get injured in Week 1 with a concussion. He's been out. Then they've tried to fill in with veterans such as Kayvon Webster, who's now on injured reserve with Johnson. The Sharice Wright. They brought him in Week 2. He's done a good job, but he's also missed time. Aaron Colvin has missed time. Jonathan Joseph, who's been there since 2011, has missed time. So injuries have impacted the cornerback position. But by the same token, what has helped keep them together has been Kareem Jackson. Now, he was a cornerback for his first 8 seasons in Houston, but they slid him back into the safety spot to cover for Andre Howell, who had the Hodgkin's lymphoma. But with the combination of the lack of depth at cornerback, along with the great play from third-round rookie Justin Reed, they've taken Jackson and moved him back to cornerback, and he has really helped out there. Okay. He has 51 tackles on the season. He's tied for the team lead in interceptions with 2. He leads the team in 10 pass deflections. He's really done a good job, and I think that he ought to get a Pro Bowl nod. That's how he ought to be in the running for a Pro Bowl.
Okay,
that's how well he's been playing.
So those guys, with some of the guys that have been banged up though on defense, there's still a chance that everybody can be healthy for the playoff run. Besides, of course, Howell and Kevin Johnson, and if that were to and Webster, so if that were to happen, you can see this defense even playing better and being. And I say that because I'm trying to envision whether this team, and I added them into my Super Bowl futures a couple weeks ago, so I think they've got a shot to be a true Super Bowl contender. But, if they're going to be at that level, the defense needs to be one of those kind of dominating types of defenses, not taking anything away how good the offense has looked. But I just kind of think that that's the way that they have to go about winning a championship, especially on defense, and with the players they have, including Watt and Clowney. Yeah,
it is gonna have to come from the defense. They're 8th in the NFL in takeaways. They're 9th in yards. They're the 7th best scoring defense. The defense is the one element of that team that is built for outside NRG Stadium, for the elements. And again, if they can get the takeaways and Watson can play complementary football to that defense and not have any giveaways, then I think that I think I've got him as a dark horse to get a first-round bye. Again, I said dark horse. That doesn't, I recognize that Kansas City, New England, and Pittsburgh, they're the favorites to really get a bye. But I think that Houston, if they continue to win and some luck falls their way, I think it could happen. They're a dark horse to get a first-round bye.
So what do you think if they don't, and let's say they're healthy the rest of the way with all the players I mentioned that could be healthy. Let's say they're healthy the rest of the way, and we know they're going to go to the playoffs if they keep playing well, of course. So let's say they're in the playoffs and they don't win. They don't advance no matter whether they get a first-round bye or not. Why do you think that will happen? What will hold them back? Except, of course, a last-second great game, which anybody could lose. But what do you think could hold this team back right now from winning a championship this season?
I think the same thing that makes them exciting. I think the passing game. And the element of the passing game I'm talking about is the protection for Deshaun Watson. He's the third most sacked quarterback in the NFL with 30 sacks. That's something that hasn't really changed, even though the offensive line has been playing well. If they get into down in distance issues, then, you're asking him to try to overcome 3rd and 9 up to 3rd and 15. Also, the penalties along the offensive line, I think those can be a problem. So I still think that it's the offensive line. And also, like I've talked about, Bill O'Brien just loves the running game and emphasizes it, even though I don't think that he has the premier talent for the running game with Lamar Miller. And they're going to get Dante Foreman back. They've activated the 21-day window so he can return to practice. But I still don't think that they have the talent in the running back core to be a premier, to utilize them effectively to be a premier rushing attack or have that threat coming out of the backfield like you see in New Orleans and Los Angeles.
Yeah, sure.
For example.
Yeah, so even though we all know that the biggest issue with them moving forward via free agency or the draft is going to be offensive line, and let's just say the draft. The fact is that they're not. They like every team, you're not going to reach for an offensive lineman unless you believe that there's the guy's worthy of that selection, and therefore if you think you're reaching for an offensive lineman, if they have to go to a different position, you could see them definitely going with a running back.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and if Lamar Miller, he's entering the last year of his contract. In 2019, I'm talking about.
Sure.
He'll be entering the last year of his contract, and if you let him go pre-June 1st, the cap hit is only $1 million, and the Texans, according to our friends at overthecap.com, have the 7th best 2019 cap space at $73.9 million.
Well, with Deshaun Watson and J.J. Watt on the team, there could be a lot of free agents that are going to say, "Sure, sign me up. I'll go to Houston. I'll be a part of that." So, the future's bright, and they just got to keep everybody healthy. That's why I think this is an exciting team, even though they're not a finished product. There's a shot. There's always a shot in the NFL. I mean, the Eagles won the Super Bowl last year, for crying out loud, and they were a banged-up team with a backup quarterback. So that's why I believe Houston's got a shot, a realistic chance this year. I really do. I know it's not going to be easy. You get the Chiefs and the Steelers and the Reds and the Patriots, and I get it. But if the Eagles can do it, I think Houston can do it too.
Yeah, because Philadelphia, they had Atlanta in that bracket. They had Minnesota. They didn't play New Orleans, but still that was another challenging team that was in the conference. And yet they emerged as the NFC representative.
Yep.
And they went toe-to-toe with the Patriots. So, yeah, anything can happen, but if they are going to get there, I think that the defense is going to have to really put in a great effort.
By the way, before I let you go, speaking of Clowney and Watt, are they 100% now? And if not, when do you think they will be?
J.J. Watt, he has 9 sacks on the season.
I know, right?
He's an NFL Defensive Player of the Year nominee, so to speak. And yesterday he said, "I still don't feel like I'm 100% back
I know, right? That's
You
what I'm
believe
saying.
that?
I know. That's why I'm saying it's like I know he's doing stuff, but it's like I remember the other J.J. Watt, the healthier one, that was just really that much better. He was so good that even though he's doing well this year, you just know he's not where he used to be. But so do you think he'll get there, or he'll have to wait till next year?
I think we'll wait till next year. But he really has been progressing well.
Okay.
And to play 9 games this season after only playing 8 the previous 2 seasons,
Yep.
that is quite an accomplishment. And so maybe not the 4th record-setting Defensive Player of the Year award this year,
That's
probably
okay.
Comeback Player of the Year.
Okay.
But he definitely has been playing at that, second-team All-Pro level at a minimum.
And Clowney, how's he doing?
Yeah, Clowney's doing well. He's starting to get healthier. He tends to show up in those AFC South games when needed. But I think as we get into December football, I think that Clowney's going to be the one that's really going to activate for Houston.
All right. And by the way, is his contract up, Clowney?
Yeah, Clowney's contract is up. General Manager Brian Gain has not spoken with his representatives, just wants Clowney to focus on football. So no news on that front. We'll really start to hear things as soon as the season is over, whether that is, and there'll be a lot of folks mad in the Bayou City if it's December 31st.
I can imagine the teams with salary. I mean, even my team, the Jets, I can imagine they'll just be loading up a Banks truck next to his house. They'll knock on his door if they can. So yeah. So the Texans got to take care of that if they can, especially with all the money they got. So, but hey, got the rest of the season to go, and you got to prove it. Go out there and make plays and show you deserve it, and stay healthy most importantly. So, and I hope he does. It'd be great for football, and this is an exciting team to watch with Clowney and Watt and Watson and Hopkins. Because by the way, I mean, I don't know. I'm sick and tired of hearing about Odell Beckham and some of these other guys. Hopkins is clearly the best receiver in football this year. I mean, is anybody paying attention?
Yeah, I think that he plays in a conference that has Antonio Brown, so that's where a lot of the attention goes and the votes when it comes to All-Pro and Pro Bowl and so forth. Even though he did make first-team All-Pro, but I think that Hopkins is one of the best receivers, and he's also a great teammate too. So you can couple the talent with his leadership and his ability to help the locker room stay cohesive. And I think that he's worth all the accolades.
All right. Well, Mark, I appreciate it. Hopefully the team goes well. I'm sure the defense is salivating at the film this week of that Washington Redskins offensive line. So I'd like to see them get that done. Good luck, and we'll look forward to talking to you again. Hopefully, maybe next month.
All right. Thanks for leaving the latch string out for me, Greg.
You got it. Thanks a lot, there, Mark. Take care. Appreciate it, Mark. All right, Mark Lane. I didn't even know what he just said. He said something Texan, but whatever he said, I don't know. What movie did I watch recently that was kind of Texas? Hell or High Water. Now, that's really Texas. Hell or High Water. Captain Kirk. Not the original, but, Captain Kirk. Chris Pine was in Hell or High Water. That was a pretty good movie. I like that one. Didn't have, like, the marketing when it came out, because Chris Pine, of course, is not like Harrison Ford or anything like that. So it didn't, I may am dating myself by saying Harrison Ford, but it didn't have that kind of cachet, but it was a very good movie anyway. But true Texas through and through, Hell or High Water. All right, so Robert Gagliardi, kind of speaking of kind of cowboy, because that's what the Wyoming football team is. They're cowboys. So we'll go from a Texan to a cowboy. With Robert Gagliardi talking Mountain West Conference football here in just a sec. And by the way, coming up a little later on, as I've mentioned, is going to be Mitch Light from Athlon Sports. Mitch and I are going to go all through the college football landscape including the ACC and Mountain West. Of course, we talked ACC football earlier with Jerry Ratcliffe, and now we're going to talk Mountain West Conference football with Robert Gagliardi. Robert, good talking to you again.
Good to be here, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing good. So I guess we're doing better than Fresno State after that game last week, even though I think the Mountain West, I certainly hope that if they put together their top officiating crew, they might want to rethink that for the rest of the season, because that was the worst officiating game I've seen all year in college football. It didn't help either team. More importantly, Fresno. I mean, I thought they got robbed several times and some really untimely calls. But I think what really also hurt Fresno in the game was, now whether or not you want to say the weather had something to do with it, whatever the case, they didn't tackle particularly well when they had the lead. They tackle better. They get a few calls. If they don't let Rippon run around for first downs and things like that, which are not his MO, then they probably win the game going away. But it was just one of the situations where they had things happen to them that just don't normally happen, and it all happened in the same time and pretty much in the same half, and it worked against them, and they just couldn't put a stop to that kind of bad momentum, and Boise was able to come back and give them credit for the win.
Yeah, again, strange things happen on that blue turf, and Rippon was good, but I also thought a big key in that game was, aside from some of the officiating or lack thereof, was Alexander Madison, the running back. I mean, he is a good back, and has shown he's been a good back, but that may have been his best game at Boise State. Maybe not just in pure yards, although he had a lot of yards, just how hard he ran and setting that tempo, and it kind of kept Fresno's defense that is still good, but kind of kept them on its heels in a lot of that game, because Rippon was doing his thing, but then so was Madison, and that just made things just hard for Fresno to get consistent stops there, and still a very good team, but again, Boise's won 93% of their games on the blue turf for a reason. Maybe they had a little outside help, but that was it was a bad loss for Fresno, a tough loss for them, but also a very good win for Boise State.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was really more important for Boise than it was for Fresno, because as we've talked about, if Boise would have lost that game, then they would not even have a chance for the Mountain West Conference Championship. But they did win the game, and now, more than likely, we're going to see the game next week against Utah State. That one is going, because they're not going to lose to New Mexico tomorrow night. I don't think that's going to happen. So as long as that doesn't happen, then we're going to get Boise and Utah State in the again. As long as Utah State wins at Colorado State, we're going to get them matching up for the Mountain next week at Boise. Now that's on a Saturday. I'm not sure if they've scheduled that for Saturday night or like the middle of the day. So I don't know what they've got the middle of the day ESPN thing. I would think ESPN would want that one at night, though, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I have a feeling it is. Yes, it's a Saturday night, 8:15. Yeah, wouldn't have it any other way if you're up in Boise.
So that's okay. It's Boise time. Okay, so that's going to be what 10? That's 10 o'clock Eastern.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
10 Eastern. Okay. So that'll be huge. That's going to decide the Mountain, and because Utah State, we were wondering whether or not Jordan Love was going to be healthy last week. Apparently, they felt he was healthy enough to play, and he had another really good game. 5 touchdown passes, almost 500 yards. But also, a player we haven't talked a whole lot about is Darwin Thompson, because we keep talking about Jordan Love, but Darwin Thompson has had a really good season.
Yeah, I think Jordan Love kind of overshadows a lot of guys on that team, both offensively and defensively. But he's having a great season. I mean, granted, Love is special, or has had a special season, but he's got a lot of guys around him too that are making plays, whether it's in the run game or the receiving game. I mean, they got good tight ends. I mean, Jordan Love is good, and I don't want to take anything away from the season he's having, but he's also got guys around him, and that make him look, maybe even better. So, look, this is a juggernaut, Utah State team that's just rolling over everybody. And if they don't put 50 on Colorado State, I'm going to be shocked, because Colorado State's just kind of lost it. But you look at just all the players that Utah State has, and all of a sudden, some of these guys were there. They've added a couple guys, but man, this is, I know a lot of talk about Central Florida, and I get it. I know they're good, the longest winning streak in the country, and this and that. But even when you compare the numbers with Central Florida, and Utah State racks, is right up there. I mean, they're still averaging 51.3 points per game. I mean, granted, some of these are going against some maybe not so great teams, but don't tell me that Central Florida's been beating, powerhouses all season either. I mean, this is an absolute juggernaut right now. And look, I think a lot of people thought Utah State was going to be good. I know they thought they were going to be a lot better than what they were picked. They were picked fourth in the preseason. But, this is, they're quietly one of the better teams in the country right now. And I know we've talked about a lot just in Mountain West football about Fresno State. We've talked plenty about Boise, even about San Diego State at one time. Utah State, I mean, right now, they're far and away the best team in this league right now. And
there you go. Thank you.
It's probably not. You could just look at the numbers. It's frankly not that close.
Yeah. Again, I think though that with Fresno, I still think Fresno. And look, we'll find out for sure next week because Utah State will try to do what Fresno wasn't able to do, and go into Boise State and win. And of course, if you can't win that game, you're not going to win the Mountain West. So, and that's the thing that I think is different, of course. And that I don't think that should be understated. Is that again, Fresno didn't need the win. Sure, it would have been nice to get revenge. They won a home field and all that other stuff and win their division. But Boise needed the win. And when Utah State goes to Boise next week, Utah State and Boise will both need the win. So it'll be both on a same level situation. And so that's going to be, I think, a big difference there that I hope Utah State's able to take advantage of and play their best football. Because we've been talking about Utah State all year. I thought they were the best team all year until the last few weeks. I started wondering whether Fresno had a little bit better of a defense. And, again, that's why I still think Fresno might be right there 50-50 or 51-49 either way with Utah State because, again, I don't know how things could have been different from Fresno's point of view if they were playing a game that they absolutely had to win. But we'll see that soon enough, whether or not Fresno gets a rematch with Boise or whether Fresno takes on Utah State for the championship game, which is something that another thing we've talked about for about 5 weeks now, which I still think is going to happen.
Still think it's going to happen, but I you're right, Greg, that as far as like the division goes, maybe, and especially, later on with San Diego State losing at home to UNLV and kind of a clunker for the Aztecs. But I do think Fresno needed this, and I guess I'm talking more from a league standpoint because going into that week,
sure,
Greg, Fresno was the highest ranked team in the college football playoff and even in the polls. And look, for leagues like the Mountain West, you're talking about New Year's Six games. I mean, not playoff, but just to get to a New Year's Six game. So I certainly don't disclaim your point about, maybe in the division they didn't need it, but for these Mountain West teams that are ranked and are in the talk of a New Year's Six game, all these games are important. So
sure,
I think they really, they needed this game, and I think that may have knocked Fresno out, although they're still up there now. Boise's in the college football playoff rankings now with Utah State. So these games. Maybe just as far as winning the division, maybe, aren't as critical, but for national recognition and New Year's Six games, they're very, very critical.
And actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, but if both Boise and Fresno play in the championship game, it's going to be at Boise again, isn't it?
As we would speak now, it would be yes.
Yeah,
it would be.
So
yes, unless I don't see how Fresno could jump over them in the rankings at this point. Obviously, with Boise beating them. So yeah.
They would have a head-to-head too.
Plays out, it would be in Boise again. Yeah.
Head-to-head. So again, last year it didn't. But did they change that with the head-to-head?
No, it's the number one thing is the team with the highest. Ranking in the
so they still haven't
playoff.
Changed that. Okay, so everybody hated that decision last year, and they said, "Well, we don't care," and they didn't change it in the offseason. Okay, so interesting. All right, so we'll keep an eye on that because who knows? I mean, that could definitely. I would think that still favors Boise though, because Boise, if they beat Utah State, is a lot better than what Fresno beating San Diego State.
Absolutely.
I agree.
So it looks like Fresno would probably have to win on the blue turf again. And I only bring that up because of the fact that I also think that the tackling issue, to me, could be explained by either cold weather or 100% being into the game as much as the other team. Because we know Fresno's a physical football team, but they just did things in the game tackling-wise we haven't seen from them all year. And I don't know where that came from. That's why I'm trying to think of an excuse, and whether it was the weather or whether they just weren't as psychologically into the game as Boise. I don't know. I think, of course, we would see that different if it was in California as opposed to Boise for a championship game rematch. But, they got to go through Boise again. They're going to have to deal with that cold weather again, and they better hope it was psychological because if they don't handle the cold weather well, then they're in trouble if they got to go back to Boise. And even Utah State could be cold.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to be balmy. It's not going to be Fresno weather, but I've seen Fresno. I saw Fresno come to Laramie here last year, and they didn't have any trouble tackling in the cold. So, maybe there was some psychological things there, and maybe some of the things you brought up, Greg, maybe there were factors in that. If that's the case, that's very surprising because that's not really what Fresno football's been about in the short time Jeff Tedford's played there, and I've seen them play in cold weather and not have that affect them. Now, the home field advantage in Boise is well known. That's watching it from on TV, obviously not being there. I got a sense that stadium was rocking probably as much as it has in a long time there. So I could see some of those factors, but I would, if it was psychological, if they thought, well, maybe we don't need it as much, or if it was the cold, that would be surprising to me if those were factors. But maybe they all were in some way, sense, or some sense. Maybe they all were.
And again, the officiating didn't help. So because it seemed like every time they key plays, they'd have a big play, there'd be some penalty. The one that the few of them aggravated me was one of the biggest one was the non-roughing call.
Mm-hmm.
That would have given them like first down inside, I think, the 10, instead of keeping the ball outside the 20, and then I think that was the drive they missed the field goal.
Right.
So they go from missing a long field goal to possibly scoring a touchdown because the ref didn't call the easiest roughing call in the universe. The guy was late by like 5 seconds. The other one that aggravated me was that there was a call they made on Fresno. It might have just, and again, it could have been a bad, Fresno call, whatever. I mean, just, might have been their fault. But then like a play or two later, it was one of those motion penalties where the officials don't call it, but then the Boise players start pointing the finger, and it's like 2 seconds later the official throws the flag. That aggravated me. It's like, wait a second. I mean, I've had enough of you guys throwing penalties against Fresno in this game. Now you're going to throw a penalty just because the Boise guy says the guy moved? It's like one of those situations where it just seemed like they were being maybe influenced a little bit more because they were in Boise. It just seemed that to me. And that's what you get. That's why you want to avoid having to play these teams in big games, like a championship game, on the opposing team's home field, because it's just natural. You're going to get home calls, and I think those were a few things that just bothered me about why I thought the officiating was so bad. I think I thought they were being a little influenced at times, and I just think that again, whether or not I know they weren't doing it on purpose. I just think that they just for whatever reason they had a much more poor performance than Fresno did. But then you could look at the poor tackling, and really, if they make one tackle in that game, the game is over. And that was after they went up 17-3. Boise's got the ball at the 45. It's 3rd and 8 or something like that. Rippon's about to be sacked. He dumps it off to his tight end, who's still about 8 yards away from the first down, and the DB or the linebacker can't make the tackle. And I think he got like 4th and a foot or something, and then they got it in the first down. You make the tackle where you're supposed to make the tackle. Boise's got to punt the football. You're up 17-3. You still got all the momentum. You're going to win the football game. But you gave them that first down. They score a touchdown. Now you've lost all the momentum. So those are the little things that happened in that game that if they play it again, I'm going to guess that won't happen again. I'm going to guess that Fresno will be a little bit better, a little bit more mentally into it, even if it's just a little bit. They'll get some more calls and so forth and so on. But again, like I said, Boise, give them credit because they have to make the plays, and they did. Ripon had a good game against a good defense, something he had not done most of the season.
Yeah, and I got to think if we do see that rematch in the championship game, that not just all those things you mentioned, Greg, but look, Fresno lost to him last year in the championship game. Then the stinging of this game last week. If you can't be, I don't care if they play this game on the moon. If you can't be motivated to get up for that one, then I don't know how you can. So there should be that factor.
Sure, that's true. Well. Yeah, to me, it would be a little bit more of, we got to go back there again. Bad things happen when we go to Boise. And that's why I'm sure they'd rather play Utah State just because of that reason, but not that they would say that. They might say, we don't get them again for what happened. But we all want to see Utah State and Fresno just because of the fact that I think we both believe that they're the two best teams in the league. But if Utah State truly is the best team in their division in the Mountain, then they will beat Boise in Boise. But we'll talk more about that game next week. What in the world did happen to San Diego State last week? Now, do you think that it had to do with the Fresno loss?
I really don't, because I just think, Greg, as good as and I still think San Diego State's good. Look, and even though when they were winning 6 in a row or whatever, they were all close games.
Yeah, they beat San Jose State by 3 at home.
Right, but they were living on the edge because they were making mistakes, whether it was fumbles or punt returns or horrible or untimely penalties. They were living on the edge for quite some time, and it finally came back and bit them. I don't think the previous game, at least, obviously I wasn't there, so I guess I can't get in their heads. I don't think that had anything to do with it. I just think, Greg, they've just been living on the edge too long,
okay,
and it finally came back and bit them. But the thing that surprised me the most about that is UNLV beat San Diego State at its own game. I mean, they were the more physical football team on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They basically beat San Diego State at its own game. And, look, I know, even with Rodgers out, UNLV had shown that they can at least move the ball fairly well, fairly consistently, and sometimes even score points. But they couldn't stop you or I, for goodness sake, for the most part. But they did, and that just shocked me. So I think that, which probably surprised San Diego State, and then just the mistakes more than anything, penalties hurt them. There were some fumbles, and a
75-yard touchdown run to win the game.
Right. But I also think this whole quarterback carousel with Agnew and Chapman has come back and bit them a little bit. Neither one has played very bad, but, one starts and then the other comes in and finishes, and then it's vice versa.
Yeah,
look, they're both pretty good. They're both pretty good quarterbacks, but look, maybe I'm old school and stuff. I think, you stick with somebody, and look, if you have to make a change because of ineffectiveness or injury or whatever, fine. But this whole, let's play him, and then we'll finish with this guy, and then switch. I just think they kind of overthought themselves a little bit with that, and just, playing with fire as much as they have with the mistakes they made finally came back and bit them. I just didn't think it would come back and bite them against UNLV.
And I think what the point it was proven is they did have an 11-point lead in the fourth quarter. So it's one of those situations where they've got their same little close lead like they've had all season, but this time they just and maybe they win the football game, of course, if Thomas doesn't run for 75 yards. Because they got to drive the field against San Diego State's defense. But, hey, one play. That's why we always talk about it. Don't let a dog hang around so they can make one play and beat you. And that's what happened. And UNLV hung around. Thomas galloped 75 yards for the touchdown with 3.5 minutes to go for the win. And this is huge for Tony Sanchez. I mean, what a big win for him. I want to see how for real the win, though, is over these next 2 weeks. Because if they lose these next 2 weeks, we're just going to say it was just a week. But if you're going to go into San Diego State and win, well, I want you to definitely win one of the next 2 games. I don't care how you do it, but you better win one of the next 2 games. And maybe even this week, because Hawaii's not playing particularly well. They can't win. They've lost 4 straight, and they're 1-7-1 against the spread in the last 9 games. And UNLV's beaten Hawaii the last 3 years.
Right, and then they got their rivalry game with Nevada, who's maybe, playing some of the best football in this league, aside from Utah State and the likes right now. So, big win for Tony Sanchez. I don't know if it was, a job-saving victory. Maybe that's a little premature to go down that route, but Yeah, so let's see what you're made of. This was supposed to be, they had aspirations of bowl games, continuing that progress. Well, that's out the window. But if you're still if you're making those strides despite some losses or adversity, then follow it up with something. Go to Hawaii and win or something. Yeah, I mean, don't want to take anything away from last week, but now what do you got?
Yep.
What do you got for me lately? So
Yeah.
let's see what they can do this week. And if they play like that, they got a great chance to go to Hawaii and win on Saturday.
Oh yeah,
I think.
I mean, I like them. They're a 6.5-point dog. I'm taking them. I'll take them to win the game. I mean, I think that because I don't think Hawaii could do what they did last week. So the way they're playing, at least, Hawaii needs to find a way to get back to the way they were playing earlier this year. Who knows? Maybe a lot of it has to do with when you clinch the bowl, because they've definitely been a different team since then. And we'll find out whether or not they can get going, because they'll have their chance to prove whether I'm right or wrong, because they're at San Diego State next week.
But remember with Hawaii, Greg, because they schedule an extra game, Hawaii still has to win one more game to get bowl eligible.
Oh, they do?
They have the 6 wins, but they have to win one more to get bowl eligible.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that.
There's 5 bowl eligible teams in the league now. Hawaii could be the 6th if it picks up a victory. Air Force and Wyoming need 2 more wins to get bowl eligible, but Hawaii still needs 1 more to get bowl eligible.
Okay,
so.
All right. I'm not sure that's. Okay. And why do they do that, by the way? Hawaii.
Because with Hawaii, with all the travel involved, they're allowed to. They play 13 games, so they have to win 7 to get bowl eligible. They're not playing the 12 games. If you play 13, you have to get to 7 wins to get bowl eligible. It's play 13 regular season.
No, but why do you? Is there and so they play 13? How often do they play 13 games?
More often than not.
Really?
More
Okay.
often than not.
And do they do it because they feel that because all the travel they have to go through, that it's just a numbers game, and the more opportunities they have, the better chance they have, even though it's an extra game?
Yes, and also, a lot of it's price-wise, because it's, they put out a lot of money for teams to come to Hawaii, especially more non-conference stuff, but even there's stipends for teams even within the conference. But yeah, that's kind of the reasoning there. Absolutely.
All right. So, by the way, I also like Fresno, even though the game's 12.5. I like them against San Diego State. Fresno's been dominant at home this year. They beat up on San Diego State last year. So, and that was a road game. So I think they could do that again. And you mentioned Nevada. I like Nevada as well this week. They're a 14-point favorite at San Jose State, and they're playing great football, as you mentioned. And I don't see that stopping at San Jose State. So I think given 14 with their offense against San Jose State's defense, I don't think that's much to ask for.
No, I mean, I got to see Nevada really. I've seen them off and on, but I watched a good part of the game with CSU, with Colorado State, and man, they can run it, they can throw it. They got some playmakers on defense. They're maybe not the best defense by any means, but they got enough guys to make plays. I really like the trajectory Nevada's going right now. I really, really do.
And then your game is a big one. Wyoming at home against Air Force. The winner will get an opportunity to clinch a bowl next week, and the loser's out. So that's a big game at Wyoming. And Air Force is coming off the win last week against New Mexico. Wyoming is all of a sudden playing a completely different, better football thanks to freshman Sean Chambers at quarterback. And here's the trend of the week in the Mountain West. Wyoming is 5-4 in their last 9 games against Air Force, covering all 9 games. So they're a 2.5-point favorite at home, and it may snow, right, on Saturday? Could snow?
Oh, it's not a may. I think it's coming.
Really?
The latest forecast is it's coming in Friday night. And maybe by game time at 2 o'clock Mountain Time, it may have stopped, but it's only supposed to be in the 20s. There could still be snow. This is going to be a winter wonderland type of game, and it's not for the faint of heart, at least as far as dressing up for it. So yes.
And what do you like about the game at all for Wyoming? I like Wyoming in the game. I'm a big Craig Bowl fan. And they're playing really good defense this season, and now they got themselves a quarterback. And Evans and Chambers, it's a nice duo. They got the home field advantage. So I'm going to lean towards Wyoming in this one, not by a long mark. I mean, this should be every bit as close as the point spread says it should be, but I'll lean with Wyoming as the home team. What do you think about this matchup?
You know, I like the matchup. This is, these guys, I think in the last, of the last 19 games, 14 have been decided by 10 points or less. Wyoming has shown under Craig Bowl that they play that option football very well. Now that doesn't mean they can just rest on those laurels, but they played it well. I like the running game, but Air Force is, these are two of the better run defenses in the Mountain West. So both teams are going to want to run the ball, but how effective they're going to be will be very interesting. But the one thing I'm going to be curious about with Sean Chambers, a couple things with Sean Chambers is, they only threw 8 times against San Jose, and they really only had to. They didn't really have to throw it that much. But he had issues in the cold, ball security. He fumbled a couple times. Even some handoffs were a little off. They've been practicing in this stuff. It hasn't been snowing here all week, but how does he handle that? Air Force practices in it too, so it's not like they're not used to it. So we're going to need to see, the continued maturation of this young quarterback. There's been some very good things done. I don't know what weather will be like as far as how conducive that'll be to throwing the ball, but they're going to have to throw it some, and they're going to have to. And Wyoming's going to have to deal with an Air Force, front seven that's been pretty stout. So I like Wyoming. I have a feeling though they'll have the home field advantage. It's their senior day. This has been a very successful senior class, but if weather gets in the way and this storm is as big as maybe they're kind of predicting, I don't know how many people are going to be in the stands. So I don't know, granted, to be in your own home stadium is nice, but other than the fans and the cheerleaders and the players, I don't know how many people are going to be here. So I don't know if that's going to take away from it. But I still like Wyoming, but I like a close game because these two teams are pretty evenly matched.
Yeah, and look, for us college football fans, bring on the snow who don't have to go to the game. So,
right.
I know you're not saying bring on the snow because you'll be at the game, but I'll sit there and cheer on the snow when I turn on the game from my living room. I'll hope I see the snow. So because we haven't had a snow game this year, we had a snow quarter. I remember the Wisconsin-Illinois quarter, and then that was it. Then it stopped snowing, and it was sunny an hour later. So we haven't had a snow game yet that I can remember in college football yet this season. So maybe we're overdue.
Yeah, I think we might get our wish on Saturday, at least here in Laramie. I think we're going to get it.
All right, Robert, appreciate it. We'll talk about the big Fresno State-San Diego State game next week and then preview the even bigger Utah State-Boise State game.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Robert. All right, that's Robert Gagliardi. And Robert, you can check out his work covering Wyoming football in the Mountain West for newspapers in Laramie and Cheyenne. You can follow him on Twitter at RP Gagliardi. All right, also thanks to Mark Lane joining us from Texans Wire at USA Today. So we've learned more about the Houston Texans and their chance of being a true Super Bowl contender. And also Ted Sevransky of Covers.com, a.k.a. Teddy_Covers. That's his handle on Twitter. So we'll talk college football coming up a little bit later on OFN College Football Weekly here on the Our Lads Football Radio Network. That's it for the OFN Today this week. We'll be back again next week, Thanksgiving week. And just 2 shows, Tuesday and Wednesday. Dave Koken on Tuesday and Mark Lawrence on Wednesday before our Thanksgiving festivities begin on Thursday. So enjoy. We'll see you a little bit later on, though, for OFN College Football Weekly with Mitch Light. And then that'll wrap it up because we don't have any shows tomorrow. No Jet Show tomorrow. Thank goodness. Thank goodness they're off. And we'll see you soon, unless you're just an OFN Today fan, and we'll see you next week. And that's it for the show. Alpha, Mike Foxtrot.